Hi, this is Carol Pope.
Hi, I'm Kevin Staples.
And you're listening to Rainbow Country
with Mark Terra.
The views and opinions expressed on the following program are those of the persons appearing on the program.
Today on Rainbow Country, Inside Out, a 2S LGBTQ plus film festival. I have 2 interviews from some unique films lined up. Out in the Ring, a documentary about queer representation in professional wrestling, and Unidentified Objects, a sci-fi dramedy about a gay dwarf, a plucky sex worker, and a road trip to Canada in search of aliens. All that and more on episode 302, so stay tuned for Gay Talk Radio right here on Rainbow Country.
Hello, my name is Conchita.
And I'm Barbecue.
And my name is Hardcora. And we are the Beat Girls.
You're listening to
Rainbow Country with Mark Tara.
Well, hello and welcome to a brand new journey through Rainbow Country. As I like to call it, a little gay radio show working to give voice to the LGBT community and beyond. And as always, I am your tour guide through Rainbow Country. I'm producer and host, Mark Tara. By the way, Rainbow Country originates from CIUT-FM in Toronto and now proudly in syndication on 12 outlets across Canada, from coast to coast to coast. The Yukon, British Columbia, Saskatchewan, Manitoba, Newfoundland, Ontario, even down to Buffalo, New York, and online. Well, thanks to you tuning in, streaming, downloading, but ultimately listening. Together we continue to build Rainbow Country into a nationally syndicated gay radio show, a #1 LGBT podcast on Podomatic.com's Gay and Lesbian chart, as well as being recognized as Canada's #2 LGBT podcast on Feedspot.com. So, today, Inside Out, a 2S LGBTQ plus film festival founded in 1991. The Inside Out Film Festival began as a way to help in promotion, production, and exhibition of films made by and about 2S LGBTQ plus people of all ages, races, and abilities. Inside Out runs in person in the Toronto area and streaming online in Ontario, May 26th to June 5th. For more information, insideout.ca. Plus, in Hour 2, I'm featuring some spotlights on some LGBT artists. American queer country artist Sundaes and Canadian performer, producer, and DJ Feura. So as you know, Rainbow Country airs on the NCRA network, the National Campus and Community Radio Association, as well as on streaming. All these outlets are listener supported. That helps to keep the lights on and the airwaves broadcasting. As you know, on my 300th episode, I used that as a fundraising opportunity. And I wanted to take this time to recognize some individuals who donated to show their support for independent community and campus radio. Liam Mitchell, a listener of Rainbow Country. Liam Mitchell, I thank you for letting your support, for letting your voice be heard. David Gale, award-winning actor, host, and someone you might recognize from the hit cooking show, Loving Spoonfuls. Do you remember Loving Spoonfuls? Such a good show. David Gale, thank you for your support and letting your voice be heard. and Carol Barrett, producer and host of the CIUT-FM music show, Ruby Slippers, which airs on CIUT-FM Fridays, 7 p.m. Eastern. And by the way, it's never too late to donate. So if you find value in what I'm doing here on Rainbow Country, working to give voice to the LGBT community and beyond, if you are able to, please consider making a donation to your local community outlet, campus outlet, or even your favorite streaming service that airs Rainbow Country. Let your voice, let your support be heard. And by the way, later on this hour, I'll be giving some more shout outs.
Hi, everybody. This is Gino Vanelli. You're listening to Rainbow Country with Mark Tara. Out in the Ring is a documentary about queer representation in professional wrestling. Up next, I chat with Rai Levy, the director of Out in the Ring.
Wrestlers are artists. It's about choreography and timing and acting. It's all these art forms in one. And when I used to watch it, not only was I captivated by the wrestling, but I was captivated by the characters.
There is so much crossover in the realm of queer performance and wrestling.
That's why gay-themed characters have always thrived throughout the history of professional wrestling.
A lot of queer people don't know their queer history, and the struggles that queer performers have faced in wrestling have never been discussed.
Whenever I first got to Moulins, of course, I kept everything under lock and key because I didn't want her to know that I was gay.
In the early days of Pat Patterson's career, being homosexual was illegal, and it was considered a mental illness.
For them, it was always about being able to hide in plain sight.
It sucks that it had to happen, but the people that kept fighting and fighting and fighting, like, they're the reasons why we're now where we are now.
I don't want us to ever have to be somebody we're not again.
Somebody has to start something, because if no one speaks up, nothing's ever going to change.
You think I'm going to shy away from the fact that I'm gay?
It's about time that you're not afraid to come out and be afraid that the promoter's going to squash you down because of who you are and what you are.
The ring is the only place I actually get to be who I am.
They stereotype me how I look, and then as soon as I start wrestling, it's like, holy crap, this guy is awesome.
White man wrestling has had a great 2,000 years, but there's other kinds now.
It is possible. An out from the jump gay person can get over, can sell you merchandise, can bring in a house.
She's just
Your talent should be the only thing that determines how far you get. But in order for us to get to this utopian idea, at some point it needed to be on record what actually fucking happened.
Rai Levy, hi, how are you?
I'm doing great. Thanks for having me on, Mark.
You're more than welcome, I have to say. Thank you for being here, to have your voice, your story be heard by the LGBT community and beyond. So thank you for this, especially to talk about something I think is near and dear to your heart, Out in the Ring. This is a film that you've made, a documentary that essentially looks at the queer history, the queer representation when it comes to professional wrestling. I have to say, Rai, on a personal note, I love me a wrestler. Just want to say.
Well, I definitely love wrestling and love my wrestlers.
So let's start there. You are the director of this documentary. Talk to me about what led you to make Out in the Ring.
Well, I am one of many children who were in the 80s often left to be babysat by the television set on a weekend by their parents. And when flipping around channels, I came across Calgary Stampede Wrestling growing up in Alberta. And I remember to this day, it was Champagne Jerry Morrow against Rick Patterson. And I flipped on one channel, and then at 3 o'clock it came on again on another channel, and then at 4 o'clock it was on again on another channel. And I just got hooked on watching wrestling, and and this is, not even the WWF, WWE type. There was no Hulk Hogan's. These were guys who looked like they were going to worked at the garage around the corner from your home. But a lot of those guys would go on to become some of the biggest stars in professional wrestling, like Bret Hart and Owen Hart, the British Bulldog. So, it was definitely a place for me to start developing my love and appreciation of wrestling. And I lost, a little bit of touch with it through the years, but always kept, kind of an affection for it. And when time came to make a feature, I just decided to go with something that I had some familiarity with, but that I'd also been really kind of curious about kind of pushing it through a queer lens or looking at it through a queer lens. And with pro wrestling, it just made, you kind of go with, you write, and, in writing, they say write what you know. Well, for me, it was make something about what I knew.
So Out in the Ring, it opens up with a powerful speech from, of all people, a drag queen talking about representation. And the drag queen is talking about representation in a wrestling ring. So here's the question. How did you decide on what elements you would film, like who you would film, what matches you would film? Talk to me about that process of making Out in the Ring.
Well, when I developed the project or started developing it in 2015, just as an idea, it was, there wasn't a lot of out representation in pro wrestling. So when time came to film in 2017, I was basically just looking for whomever was out at the time and willing to speak. So we started with, a London-based wrestler, Sergeant Dixon, Scott McEwen, who was a veteran journeyman wrestler who had been, working the independents, but was out. So I was able to kind of start with him, and as time went on, I would hear about other wrestlers, Charlie Morgan, a lesbian wrestler in the UK, and then Mike Perro, who is a wrestler. He's kind of a leather daddy bear type. And then we find Effie, and then this would just go on, and I would find more and more wrestlers. And then that was basically how I came about finding these individuals. It was through whomever was available at the time when we started. And one wrestler would say, well, have you spoken to this person? Have you spoken to this person? And it would snowball from there. And ultimately, I would interview about 40 wrestlers, and we would cut that down and get to the number that we had kind of focused on. As I mentioned, in 2017, I was hard-pressed to find, 5 to 7 out wrestlers that were willing to speak. And in 2022, we're now looking at an annual list of 200 of the top out wrestlers in outsports this past year.
Talk to me about Pat Patterson and his influence on professional wrestling.
Well, Pat Patterson is probably the most important LGBTQ wrestler ever, really. He represented a time and a place in pro wrestling in the late 1960s. He had a lover. He was out to his colleagues. He was out within the industry, but was never out publicly. It was never very, people close to him and his partner Louis Dondero were aware of who they were aware they were a couple, but they were never completely out. They never referred to each other as boyfriends or partners or husbands or anything more than I had a friend. And they were together 40 years. And Pat was a big star coming out of Portland, and he was originally from Montreal, Quebec. And he would become a huge star in San Francisco, and then eventually would be hired by the McMahon family to work with the WWF at the time in the 70s, and now known as the WWE. And Pat Patterson would become essentially the right-hand man to the current owner, Vince McMahon Jr., and he was responsible for creating some of the most intricate wrestling angles, some of the big, helping to mold and shape some of the biggest stars ever in the industry. The Rock was a specific project for him, but also creating some of the most popular events and wrestling matches, events like the Royal Rumble, the Survivor Series. And Pat was incredibly well respected by not only the wrestlers themselves, but the people who worked in the office. They leaned on Pat to basically, to advise them on how to best create characters and build the product so that it became as successful as it is today. And without somebody like a Pat Patterson, I don't know if pro wrestling would be where it is.
So Out in the Ring, it's currently doing the film festival circuit. What are your plans to have the film released publicly, generally?
Well, it's such an early spot right now because we're just about to world premiere on June 3rd at Inside Out in Toronto. Nobody has seen the film yet other than our immediate team, the editor, the producers, and myself. So none of the wrestlers have seen it yet. Some journalists have seen it, like yourself. And so it's, in the case of the wrestlers, they have not even had a chance to see it yet. We literally locked picture a week ago, finished the credits, the color, and, the mix was just done a week before that. So this is so fresh and kind of out of the womb in terms of it being birthed and, kind of given to the world. And I'm just hoping that, we'll be able to have a successful festival run, begin to have those public screenings at festivals so that our wrestlers who are in the film can share in this and engage with audiences. I'm delighted that at our screening here in Toronto, we're going to have women's wrestling legend Susan Tex Green in attendance for the Q&A, and she'll be flying in for that. And Susan is currently 70 years old, and she wrestled in the 1960s and all the way through the 70s, and to this day still trains in a wrestling ring in her backyard in Columbia, South Carolina. She's had some injuries recently, but she's determined to get back into the ring and keep going as long as she can. And I'm delighted that she's going to be here in Toronto and be at the screenings there. And then I'm hoping that down the road we'll be able to have additional screenings around the world and have wrestlers and performers experience the screenings alongside audiences.
Is there a Canadian LGBT type of wrestling event or anything like that?
I mean, there have been certain events that have been pride events. Canada doesn't really have an LGBTQ plus promotion. There are certain performers who come here and wrestle regularly. People like Sunny Kiss, who is a fantastic gender fluid performer, and she is amazing. Next week, on May 26th, in Toronto, trans wrestler Edith Surreal is coming through to wrestle in Toronto, and she'll be here. So audiences will get to experience her. And then we have some Canadian performers, people like Speedball Mike Bailey, who are currently wrestling for some of the major promotions in the United States, Impact Wrestling on TV. And so we're seeing an increase in new performers, mostly out of Quebec so far right now, where wrestling is incredibly popular. And we're seeing, we're seeing more and more around the world, and hopefully we'll continue to see that increase as well in Toronto, and add more amazing performers globally. Because right now, I mean, there are wrestlers from the UK, there are LGBTQ promotions in the UK, but we have wrestlers from Finland and Australia and New Zealand, Spain, Mexico. It's definitely expanding globally, and hopefully we'll see, some more shows with more LGBTQIA plus performers on them here in Canada as well.
Yeah. Just thinking out loud, it would be so great to see something like an LGBT wrestling spotlight or something, especially during Pride Weekend in Toronto here, because that's where I'm based.
Wonderful. Absolutely, I think it would be wonderful. I mean, and as somebody who's based in Toronto as well, I'd love to, obviously we've got, as I said, Sunny Kiss regularly wrestles here and did wrestle in Toronto last month at Ryerson. And we, Killian McMurphy is another out wrestler who's worked for promotions here. Speedball Mike Bailey continues to wrestle throughout the world and in Canada regularly, is from Montreal. Their partner Veda Scott, they are amazing and are a fantastic wrestler and wrestling commentator. And then we have performers like Caitlin Diamond, who is now who's Canadian-born, but now based in the United States, working as a referee and a wrestling promoter right now, and still occasionally wrestling. So, it's increasing. And the hope is that eventually we'll be able to add more performers and maybe do an event in Canada and have that highlighted. And hopefully that this film can show audiences and inform people about the performers. I think people are going to find a new appreciation for not just the performers themselves, but wrestling in general.
Yeah. So Out in the Ring, it talks about the WWE's 1990s sex scandal. It talks about women's wrestlers like Chyna, who wrestled both women and men, unfortunately passed away in, I believe, 2016. The film even talks about gay conversion therapy, and in 2022, trans women in wrestling. So here's my last question for you, Rai. What do you hope audiences come away with after they've seen Out in the Ring? What do you hope your audiences come away with?
I think what I've always hoped for with any topic that I presented is that we are able to document and create a document of history. Without history, we're doomed to repeat things of the past, negative things. And I think it's important to remember our past. I mean, we can't, we need to be aware of where we came from. And it was important for me to go as far back as possible and highlight the many different men and women who worked through the 1950s, 60s, 70s, and 80s to today, where we're seeing, this major influx of young performers coming out as non-binary, trans, gender fluid, asexual, ambisexual. There are so many amazing performers from all walks of life, various, BIPOC performers, leather men to amazing, trans women, indigenous trans women like Nyla Rose, and she is the first world women's champion who happens to be transgender, and she is incredible. And the hope is that we'll see more performers like that. AC Mack is an African American performer out of Atlanta, Georgia, who became one of the first openly gay world champions, holding the Internet Wrestling Television Heavyweight Championship. So the hope is that we'll see more representation at the top of the card, but also that more, as more wrestlers come out, we're going to see hopefully that they'll be able to create their own spaces and expand this beyond just a WWE or AEW, the major television promotions, that this can go beyond that, that we'll get to a point where wrestling, as just becomes a bigger space for, storylines and representation and athletics from the past to the present. And hopefully these new performers will be able to be part of the history for the future.
Wow, well said. Rai Levy, well said. I have to say, thank you so much for your time. Well said, well done, and well made.
Thank you so much. I'm really thrilled that you enjoyed the film.
Wrestlers are artists. It's about choreography and timing and acting. It's all these art forms in one. And when I used to watch it, not only was I captivated by the wrestling, but I was captivated by the characters.
There is so much crossover in the realm of queer performance and wrestling.
That's why gay-themed characters have always thrived throughout the history of professional wrestling.
A lot of queer people don't know their queer history, and the struggles that queer performers have faced in wrestling have never been discussed.
Whenever I first got to Moulins, of course, I kept everything under lock and key because I didn't want her to know that I was gay.
In the early days of Pat Patterson's career, being homosexual was illegal, and it was considered a mental illness.
For them, it was always about being able to hide in plain sight.
It sucks that it had to happen, but the people that kept fighting and fighting and fighting, they're the reasons why we're now where we are now.
I don't want us to ever have to be somebody we're not again.
Somebody has to start something. Because if no one speaks up, nothing's ever going to change.
You think I'm going to shy away from the fact that I'm gay?
It's about time that you're not afraid to come out and be afraid that the promoter's going to squash you down because of who you are and what you are.
The ring is the only place I actually get to be who I am.
They stereotype me how I look, and then as soon as I start wrestling, it's like, holy crap, this guy is awesome.
White man wrestling has had a great 2,000 years, but there's other kinds now.
It is possible. An out from the jump gay person can get over, can sell you merchandise, can bring in a house.
She's just wrong!
Your talent should be the only thing that determines how far you get. But in order for us to get to this utopian idea, at some point it needed to be on record what actually fucking happened.
Out in the Ring is part of the Inside Out Film Festival. For more information, insideout.ca.
Hi, I'm Keegan Hurst, former professional rugby player, coach, raving homosexual, and you're listening to Rainbow Country with Mark Tara.
So, I think it's time for more shout-outs. What do you say? A special shout-out to Paul Andrews for his contribution to independent radio. Artist, songwriter, producer, remixer. Check out his new album, From the Distance. And for all things Andrews, paulandrews.org. And in hour 2 of Rainbow Country, I'll be playing some music from Paul Andrews. Cheryl Wright, thank you for your contribution. She's a best-selling lesbian author, pilot, engineer. Her latest book is Illusion Lake, which has a rating of 4.5 out of 5 stars on Amazon.ca. Cheryl Wright, I thank you for letting your support be known. And for all things right, CherylWright.com. And finally, the Mangfather, Bob Katz, musician, rapper, spoken word artist. His current album is the pandemic-inspired 6 Cans of Olives. Bob Katz, I thank you for your support to independent radio, and for all things Katz, check out the website, themangfather.com. And in hour 2, I'll be playing some music from the Mangfather himself, Bob Katz.
Hi, I'm Garrett Conley, author of Boy Erased, a memoir. You're listening to Rainbow Country with Mark Tara.
Unidentified Objects, a sci-fi dramedy about a gay dwarf and a plucky sex worker as they go on a road trip to Canada in search of aliens.
Half the money beforehand. Now.
Whoa, what?
What? If I get half of the $1,700 in advance, you can borrow my car on 3 conditions. 1, no eating in or drinking inside. You don't strike me as a very tidy person. 2, no parallel parking. If you need to stop, you find a nice easy spot where you can pull right into. No back and forth, no adjusting the wheel, and 3, I come to.
You want to drive to Canada?
God, no. No. But I was supposed to before, and I didn't. And if I don't go now, I never will. So, $1,700 half up front.
Anything you want. You don't know how much this means to me. Yeah.
Okay. Right here. I'll pack.
Oh, Mr. Peter H. Winona J. J for Jordan. Can already tell this is gonna be amazing.
Yeah. So fucking amazing.
So amazing.
Juan Felipe Zaluda. Am I saying your name right?
Juan Felipe Zuleta, but that's good. Zuleta, yeah.
Yeah, Juan. Hi, how are you?
Mark, I'm good. Thank you. How are you?
I am well. Sarah, hey. Hi.
Hi.
How are you, Sarah? Hey.
I am so good. How you doing?
I am well. I have to say thank you both for being here. Especially to talk about a new
Thank
film
you for having us.
that's doing the festival circuit scene right now. Juan, you are more than welcome. Unidentified Objects. Sarah, you play Winona, and Juan, you co-wrote, you produce, you direct this film. Juan, let's start with yourself. What's the story that you're telling in Unidentified Objects?
Well, that's a great question. I think Unidentified Objects ultimately is telling a story of 2 people in New York who are in their own ways not having a great relationship with life and who they are and where they live. So one is Winona and the other one is Peter, and then they're neighbors. And it happens that Winona is in a position where she has to leave Earth because she believes in this alien abduction that is going to happen in a 3 days time. And so she basically convinces her neighbor, which is Matthew, to go to the north of Canada, Newfoundland area near Labrador City, because supposedly she's going to go there and leave Earth. And what sounds like okay, what is the genre of this movie? It eventually turns out to be a very, for me, I call it a platonic love story of 2 people who live in the fringes of society who feel they don't belong in the world, and who feel they don't have like a circle of people or a community. And in the process, in the road, even though they have very different perspectives in the world and they think very differently, and they're almost opposites in some ways, they both end up building a friendship, an unexpected friendship that is lovely, and it changes both of their lives. And now, like, I'm not gonna give you any plot because I want people to watch the movie and find the story for themselves. But ultimately, it's a movie that was written during COVID, after 4 years of Trump administration, or during the Trump administration in the U.S. As an immigrant myself, living in New York, and like Leland and I had it was a really tough road in terms of like our jobs, because when COVID hit, we weren't making any money. We were like in a position of like trying to like find a way to survive as filmmakers, and scrapping, and we couldn't leave. New York was really hard during COVID. So it's kind of like came from a place of and then obviously like seeing all the division happening in the world, and seeing all of this, and I mean, like, even in my personal job, like when I do a commercial, sometimes people call me Jose. And like when I'm in New York and I'm like, dude, my name is Juan Felipe. I'm not Jose. It's because I'm Hispanic. Not all Hispanic people are called Jose. So it's kind of like, in many ways, I think it's an anthem for those unidentified objects in the world that don't find a place, don't have a place, and don't feel they belong. And it's kind of like, and it brings that sense of belonging to the foreground, and in a very entertaining, funny, wacky, kind of like also quirky, and I think Sarah Hay and Matthew are some of the best actors ever. They're so incredible. So, well, I think I said more than I needed, but let me know if that works.
Well said. Sarah, you play Winona. How would you describe your character of Winona?
She's kind of your pixie dream girl character archetype, you know, like from Eternal Sunshine of the Spotless Mind. I always think about the relationship of those two characters in relationship to Winona and Peter in the movie. So she's like a free-spirited, a little bit of a new agey mindset, because she's super open and accepting and loving and wants everyone to be happy. But yet, you know, her situation, she's a sex worker, during the pandemic specifically, having a lot of issues with that, and trying to figure out like who she is in the world and where she fits in this really weird, divisive time. And so I can relate to her a lot, because I always kind of feel like, where do I fit into things artistically and in my work? And she's the kind of character that if she was real, she'd be my best friend.
Well said. So, Unidentified Objects, a gay dwarf, a plucky sex worker, a road trip to Canada in search of aliens. Juan, you co-wrote this movie, you produced this movie, you directed this movie. In regards to the story itself, was there a flashpoint? Was there a moment that sparked the idea for this movie?
So, Mark, really quick, the main writer of the script is my good friend and creative collaborative, Leland Frankel. I'm going to credit all the dialogues and all the crazy things to him. I came and I obviously gave it a vision and like elevated in some ways the script, but I think ultimately it's a collaboration amongst all of us. And to answer your question, we did have like, and this is like, we do, from a personal standpoint, I do feel cinema and our responsibility as filmmakers, or at least for me, that my belief is that we have to tell stories that open doors to human beings that are not necessarily in our world, and that is not only a window. We're not only seeing into this world, but we have to be able to feel it, and be able to immerse and like get it, and like be able to get a perspective within that world that we haven't seen. And when it came, I did have an idea of a little person character a long time ago, because I just found the little person, like if you think if you take a few steps back and you think about the rights, human rights, and everything that's happening, and like how cinema evolves, you go back to like representation, and you think about how the like black actors started being more on screen, and how, for example, like eventually society accepted them more. But there was a point where people, that was almost like unheard of and unseen of. And then you go into, I mean, same with Hispanic actors in some ways, especially in American cinema or more in international. Like it just, like now you see Ana de Armas in a James Bond movie, but before it was a little bit more rare to see somebody with an accent or even somebody that spoke a foreign language having conversations in an English-speaking world. So Little People were just something fascinating because their representation in cinema is literally borderline some of the worst representation that you could possibly think about from a objective standpoint, meaning like most little people are treated as animals in films, period. Like they don't have anything. They don't have like three-dimensional characters. Like now, for example, like we have a lot of like queer cinema. We have a lot of queer festivals that are pushing that narrative of like which I find fascinating. That's why I love Inside Out, Outfest, Frameline, all these festivals that are like. But for example, Little People is a big community. It's like that disability people. And so I just found that from a long time ago, from cinema studies when I was in school, I just found it very interesting. And then Leland and I started writing, like thinking about what is something that we're passionate about, and it was like telling the story of those people that represent misfits and people that don't belong. So that very quickly, the story of a little person came to the foreground in terms of what the story is, and then we developed the character of Winona around that, and then the road trip aspect of it also just became part of like. We love road trip movies. Y Tu Mamá También is one of my favorite movies ever. Also, I mean, yeah, there's a million like road trip movies that I love, and we just found like it's a very intimate way to build a relationship between two characters. So naturally, the road trip genre fell, and then I just had a lot of ideas of how can we tell a different road trip movie. It just doesn't feel like any other one. Mm-hmm. And I think that's what Unidentified Objects is. If you watch Unidentified Objects, it is a road trip movie, but it's unlike anything you've ever seen before.
Juan, random question. Do you believe in aliens?
That's a great question. And I think the answer is yes. I do believe in aliens. Do I believe are they in our planet Earth? I changed on that. I kind of want to think that they do, but I do believe there's extraterrestrial life, absolutely 100%, and that there's probably way more intelligent civilizations than ours, and that we're just like primitive.
Sarah, for yourself, do you believe in aliens?
Oh yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. I don't know if you've ever seen. There's this documentary called Fantastic Fungi. That's super, super fascinating about mushrooms and different funguses and mycelium. And I think that that aliens are in mushroom form.
Okay.
So far
I love that.
That's amazing. Well said. Sarah, for yourself, what drew you to be part of Unidentified Objects?
So several things. Number one, I read a lot of scripts. I read a lot of projects, and I don't really work as much as I would if every script read the way that this one did. Then I'd be working every day, because I feel like every 100 scripts I come across something that I'm like, wow, this actually means something to me and could potentially help people and connect people and is powerful and unique. And the character's not like the typical thing that I get offered, which is like the sad girl whose life is just like miserable. This is like a very, different character for me. And Juan even said that when we met each other, we met and we had a meeting about the movie. He was like, I've seen you play these characters. Like, you're like this, like, sad victim girl, and then sad victim girl 2, and then the other sad victim girl. And it's like, what if you were like not your archetype or your typical typecast, and try something that's totally different, who's actually closer to my personality. And so I just couldn't say no after talking to him and reading it, and then speaking with Matthew Jeffers, who's the other actor in the film, the opportunity to work with him and get to be a part of groundbreaking little person film, like that excites me a lot.
So Juan, there's a scene in the movie, I'm calling it the bar scene, I found it funny. I found it also heartbreaking. And to be honest, it sort of talks to some of the homophobia that some gays can experience in a bar setting. Talk to me about the evolution of this scene in particular. How did this scene come about?
By the way, Mark, I love that you brought that up, because one of the reasons why I also love the queer cinema aspect of it is because I come from a very conservative, homophobic background, like in Colombia, my hometown Medellin. Like, there's not a lot of homosexual people. And I have a few friends who are, and I think for me, like, we're moving to New York and having my entire career in New York and like surrounding myself. So that bar scene, I think a lot of the evolution also came through the actors, Matthew and Hamish. Matthew was involved in the creative process from the beginning. Once we brought him in, we want to make sure that he became a producer, from the standpoint of the story. He gave us permission to explore and tell the story. And I think ultimately, like, and even though that's a queer scene and it's a beautiful scene, and it is from a human standpoint, I think there's also the aspect of, yes, queerness is huge, but also like from a little person perspective, walking into a bar, you're just not look as a normal human being. Just from the moment you step in and try to hit on somebody else. So from a dramaturgic standpoint, what that scene represents is you going for what you want in life and going for what you believe is right and what your heart is dictating to you, and then having like life get on its way. And like, as you said, this homophobic kind of like very like backwards kind of thinking, and again, it all just happened from a point of like trying to understand like humanity and trying to understand the problems that we deal with. And obviously, like, the fact that he's a queer character, it elevates that to a millionth degree, and obviously puts that, like, the tension is the favorite scene I've directed in my entire life, and it's gonna be hard to beat. But again, I think that a lot of the evolution also comes from like what you're speaking about is like, yes, it's homophobic, and it is putting that in the foreground. And there's another scene in the movie where our main character, it's kind of just trying to break and trying to understand from a visual standpoint, how can we make you go in and be there with him and feel as uncomfortable. And
something that really strikes me about that bar scene is that we all go into bars, single people, and we're sitting and meeting people and just, trying to gauge whether or not someone might be interested in you. And it's already like quite a vulnerable situation to walk into. And then if you find yourself in the middle of an area that's, questionable about if they're accepting of a certain type of person, and you try to strike up a conversation and you get rejected, that's one thing. But I think when you're, a queer person and being vulnerable, sometimes you don't get to feel safe. And that's one of those moments in the movie where it really gives you the perspective of what it's like to be someone who's quote unquote different, and just trying to connect with someone in a place where you're not accepted. And it's excruciatingly awkward. And I've even, because I'm a little like outspoken and wacky, and I've been to places in this country and in other countries, like I lived in Germany for a long time, and they're always like, "Ooh, the loud American girl." And like, from my perspective, I'm not that loud, but I am different. And so they see me differently. And that whole scene is like a dance in trying to communicate across borders of language and understanding, even though you're living in essentially the same modern times. They just can't communicate.
And actually, I can tell you something, Mark. When we wrote that scene, some friend writers of ours suggested that we had somebody beat Matthew up. Like, we had throw them out and like beat him up and like bruise him. And I was like, you know what? It's worse than beating him up. Rejection. Like the feeling of absolute rejection, when that's the single thing you want more than anything in the world. Like, if that's the thing that and again, it happens, and I feel like, again, it was a scene that I feel like the actors really like the timing of their performances and their connection. And obviously, as you know, we don't want to give spoilers, the scene plays in two different ways. Shooting that was really hard from an emotional standpoint, because we were all very invested in making the best possible, real, human, authentic feeling, and just going from something that feels like it's building love and building like the perfect scenario, and eventually it crashes the way you see it happen in the movie. Like that transition from the actors being able to play those two scenes kind of like close to each other, and like it was incredibly hard. And like Hamish was from Canada, and Matthew, I mean, they are second to none. Their preparation was incredible, and exactly it goes to what Sarah is saying is that feeling like, yeah, they expect contrary expectations to the nth degree, like to the top.
Sarah, you are an award-winning actor. You are a Golden Globe nominee. For yourself, Sarah, how did you get into acting in the first place? How did this come about for you?
I literally fell. I was like, oh, okay, I'm here. I was in Germany in a ballet company with horrible depression and an eating disorder after 25 years of ballet. And I got a phone call from a producer who was just like, there's this ballet show going on in America, and we can't find the right actress who can do ballet and also like be this edgy character. And we're, auditioning all these girls, and they couldn't find anybody. So I flew in from Germany to do a network test for Star's limited series Flesh and Bone. And I had been like a background dancer in Black Swan, and I did like a little Mary-Kate and Ashley Olsen video when I was 9, like one of those You're Invited videos. And so I didn't really have any experience, and I ended up really, really loving acting and seeing what my life was like for the first time outside of ballet, since I was just like born into the ballet world. And I decided to stay in Los Angeles after getting nominated for a Golden Globe, and have just been like tripping and falling and getting back up and figuring out what the hell acting is in Los Angeles now.
And here we are today.
And here we are, and we're very happy to be here.
Juan, for yourself, you are an award-winning filmmaker. I believe it's your 2015 film, Faded Love, garnered like 5 awards. Congrats on that.
So I actually produced Faded Love. Thank you. Yeah, and we've won grants for other projects, and I also make like direct commercials that have been at Cannes Lion, Bronze, and stuff like that. But I appreciate you. I'm definitely just starting. I'm 27, so
you got a medal at Cannes.
Yeah,
so he's great.
Yeah, we're just starting.
So Juan, my last question for you: when audiences see this film, what do you hope your audiences come away with after they've seen Unidentified Objects? Is there a bigger message, a deeper message, or something that you hope people do come away with?
Yes, there is. So it's hard to, as a filmmaker, you obviously want to entertain and you want people to take something out of the movie. And I think for me, if I would say that in one word, it's empathy. Empathy for those who are different from us. It's empathy and understanding for those who are not like us and who don't understand our experience and who we are. And I feel like that is the heart of Unidentified Objects. That's literally the title. That was from day one, the moment we decided to tell this story. And the reason why we have been relentless to telling it and putting it in the world, and we're never going to stop pushing it. And I feel I think cinema has the power to transcend belief and belief systems that exist in our society. So even though I have my own thoughts about everything that is happening, and everybody does, the world has become noisy and divisive, and all these laws that are happening in the US against in Florida and all of this stuff. Obviously, like, it's incredibly heartbreaking to see all of that. Immigrants, the Trump administration. I mean, but ultimately, I want people to watch this movie and forget everything they think and just be able to love these characters. And we purposely tell this story, and almost in some ways we start with Matthew being an unlikable character purposely. I want him to be chronology. I want him to be like an angry dwarf that you actually don't like. And I want Sarah to be annoying and also be this persistent kind of like energy that you also like your initial reaction is like, I don't like her. Like, she's not necessarily the person. She's knocking on my door, waking me up in the morning and just telling me to go. Like I want people to have their thoughts about that. But I want them, by the time the movie's done, I want them to love them. And I want them to understand them. And that's it. It goes out to that. And that's why this movie could have been told by many different people, and it could have been that different story. But I told it in this way because that's what I believe in. And I think ultimately that's the purpose that is driving me. I do believe cinema and storytelling has a power, and it has always had a power in culture. And yeah, that's kind of like the message. And it has an ambiguous ending purposely because I want people to think about it 4 days after they watch it and be like, wow, like what happened? But also have like this internal relationship with their characters and be able to like interpret their own ending.
Well said. And Sarah, for yourself, in a nutshell, for you, acting in this movie, being one of the leads, is there for you a takeaway that you hope your audience has come away with after they've seen Unidentified Objects?
Definitely. So for me, there's a line in the film that Matthew's character, the little person actor's character, says that this world does not want us. And I hope that people that see the film, that feel that way, kind of say, screw it, whose world is it? And who can tell me whether or not I belong here? Because that for me is the message of the movie. It's two people who feel like they have no place in this world, who find a place in each other. And sometimes you just need other people to, bring you up and support you in order to feel that way. And I hope this movie can act as that bridge.
Well said. Well done. Well made, both of you. Sarah Hay, thank you for your time. Juan Felipe Zaluda, thank you for your time. I hope I didn't butcher your name.
It's Zuleta. It's totally okay. Thank you so much, Mark. It's an honor to be here.
Half the money beforehand. Now.
Whoa, what?
What? If I get half of the $1,700 in advance, you can borrow my car on 3 conditions. 1, no eating in or drinking inside. You don't strike me as a very tidy person. 2, no parallel parking. If you need to stop, you find a nice easy spot where you can pull right into. No back and forth, no adjusting the wheel, and 3, I come to.
You want to drive to Canada?
God, no. No. But I was supposed to before, and I didn't. And if I don't go now, I never will. So, $1,700 half up front.
Anything you want. You don't know how much this means to me. Can already tell this is gonna be amazing.
Yeah. So fucking amazing.
So amazing.
Unidentified Objects as part of the Inside Out Film Festival. For more information, insideout.ca.
Hi, my name is Joanne Vanicola, and I'm an actor and a writer, and I was first on Rainbow Country with Mark Tara on discussing the massacre at Pulse Club in Orlando. I realized how important it was for our community to have a radio station specifically for our issues to talk about people in the LGBTQ community and to provide an outlet for our stories, to discuss our politics, culture, and give voice to the issues that matter to us. And of course our artists and the things that we do globally and talk about culture. And without people like Mangfather providing a space for this with a radio show like this, then we wouldn't have that voice. So support, tune in. Thank you.
Hi, this is Police Constable Danielle Botno, also known as LGBT Cop, and you're listening to Rainbow Country with Mangfather.
This is hour 2 of Rainbow Country, and in this hour, I'll be featuring some music from artist, producer, remixer Paul Andrews, spoken word artist and rapper, the Mangfather Katz, as well as a spotlight on Canadian performer, producer, and DJ, Feura. But starting us off, an artist spotlight on American queer country artist, Sundaes. Max, hi, how are you?
Good, I'm good.
Sundaes. Talk to me about Sundaes. What is Sundaes?
Well, it's sort of just like the moniker that I've put all of like the songwriting and stuff that I do. It's kind of just like the name that I put all of that out under. I feel like around the time, a little after I started writing songs and trying to put a band together and stuff, I felt like I wanted the project to have a name that wasn't just my name.
Mm-hmm. So is the band called Sundaes?
Yeah.
And how many pieces is the band?
It sort of depends. It's my project principally, and I write for it and I produce and mix the tracks and stuff. But right now we're playing as 5.
Okay, so Boys Who Made Me Cry. This is your current EP. How would you describe the sound, the sonic landscape of this record?
It's kind of like a little bit of current. It's like a mix. It's like one part current, like indie rock and dream pop. One part like 90s pop rock, but 90s female fronted pop rock, like Sixpence None the Richer. And then like one part old fashioned honky tonk country, a la like Patsy Cline.
So when it comes to this new record of yours, is it live off the floor? Is it an acoustic record, would you say, in regards to the band?
I mean, we did not record it live, no.
Okay.
It was recorded track by track. It started out, I don't really like as a creator, I don't really like the demo process and like the process of there being like demos and then starting over. I think that's stupid. Not like, I'm not going to go all the way to stupid. It definitely works for some people, but like for me, I kind of like to I have like a studio set up at my house, and I always like to be recording as though anything that I record could make the final record. And so for this one, I started out like most of the songs on the EP started out as like ideas for 2 guitar parts together. And then I kind of wrote vocals to that. And so like once I had been sort of sitting and strumming the guitar and having my idea for that, I would go down to the studio and hash out an arrangement and record all of my guitar parts and my vocals to a click track. And then sort of piece by piece, I would be like, okay, this song now has lead guitar, rhythm guitar, and vocals. What do I think is the most important thing next that's really going to like continue to set the tone for the rest of the instruments? Like, okay, on this song, it's bass. Let me get my friend who's a really good bass player to come over and we'll figure out a bass part. And then like, let me have a drummer. So like, they're sort of like built additively. They like start as songs that I wrote, but then they get built in collaboration with a whole bunch of friends of mine down here that are really great musicians. So it's really a fun process. And most of the time, like my demo, my guitar playing and singing from the demo day ends up on the tracks. I think there's one song on the record that I wasn't happy with the vocals for a while and it took a lot of takes, and the rest of them are all the demos.
And how long did this record take to make for you?
I think like all told, as far as like the span of time in which I was working on it, I started writing the songs like at the beginning of COVID, and I finished the record last summer, so like a year and a half. But I was sort of working on it and then taking breaks. It wasn't the only thing I was working on. I was also like doing some producing for other people and making some live videos. Like I put together like an old-fashioned honky-tonk style band and did covers of iconic starlets of country. Like we did one Patsy Cline, one Dolly, Loretta Lynn. And so that like sort of turned it into like a short movie with these different cuts in of found footage from the 50s and 60s, old commercials, old barn dance intros. So that I was really proud of. That turned out really cool too. But like there were several other things like that that I was working on while I would take breaks from the album, just because I would get to a place with it where like all the tracking would be finished, but I'd be like, I need to not listen to this for like 2 months before I can get some activity back to mix it.
So you are a queer artist, and for me, the word queer is such an umbrella term, and it encompasses a lot. For yourself, does it? Yeah. When you say the word queer, does that refer to your sexuality, to your gender? Talk to me about those aspects of yourself. How would you categorize yourself? Essentially, are you, someone who is a gay individual, someone who is gender fluid? Talk to me about that.
I honestly like tried really hard not to overthink all of those various distinctions. I think that there's honestly, like, I'm going to go all the way to the word pressure. I think that there's a lot of pressure to achieve like coming out of being a queer child and feeling like you like are not understood and that you're being put in the wrong box. I feel like there's this big pressure for like this very solid redefinition to like define yourself perfectly outside of like what is normal. And in some ways, I think that like crosses a line of diminishing returns. It's like, it becomes not worth it and stressful after a while. Like, so when I feel like there's like a curve that goes like this. It's almost like a Malcolm Gladwell thing. Like when you start defining yourself on your own and just like letting yourself be free to sleep with boys and paint your nails and do all these great queer things that I like to do. You're getting a lot of returns. It's going great. Your life, the curve's going up. Your life is getting better. And then you start thinking really hard about like all of these different, like this kind of ever-growing taxonomy of different queer boxes that we're making so that everybody can feel included. And I think that comes from a sincere and a good place. But I think that actually, like, for me, the actual goal is to defy that and to not spend any mental energy being like, well, am I really gender fluid, or am I non-binary, or am I gender queer? Or like, it's like the difference between those things to me means nothing. And I'm not trying to like sit, I know how that can sound. I'm not trying to like sit here and gaslight people to whom the minutia of that are very important. But for me, the whole point of being me is that I don't want to think about that. I just want to exist as I am and be respected as a human.
And being based in Nashville, is there a big LGBT community down there? But more so too in regards...
I'd say big, but not huge.
And what about in regards to... because I would think Nashville is known as a country city. And being someone who is part of the LGBT community, is queer, have you run into homophobia when it comes to trying to book gigs at clubs, that sort of thing?
No. Hell no. Nashville is very much a purple place. The music community, especially like the independent music community, is as aggressively leftist as it is anywhere. There's very much like Nashville and Nashville, and I like, if anything, I'm frustrated by there not being an enormous dating pool in Nashville, just because it's not like New York or like a place that's like clearly a queer beacon. But I love my music community here. I feel incredibly supported by people that I work with who are queer, people who I work with who are not queer. I love the influence of people who grew up in the South and are good at country playing. I think that Nashville's a really interesting place to be because it's one of the, like, probably one of the most culturally mixed cities in the country. It's not homogeneously tribal like a New York or an LA, or it's very like there. I don't know. I feel like everybody loves to complain about how people in society are so splintered right now and everybody's really far apart, and they are. I'm not trying to come out here and say that they're not, but I think that places like Nashville are important because it's a place where those people actually coexist in close proximity, and they don't agree, but they can see that one another are human. You see those humans over there who don't agree with you about a thing that is like fundamental to your bones. You're like, I don't know. I think the solution has to start in a place like this in some ways. But no, I have never, with a capital N, never experienced. And that, I mean, I haven't like gone and been like, can my queer ass country band play at one of the Broadway places? I'm sure that they wouldn't book me, but I wouldn't want to play there. Like, the Broadway tourism is Broadway tourism. It's like you go and see a Kenny Chesney cover band. It's not about originals. They're not looking for an indie band. I will admit that they would probably not want it to be a queer band. I probably would experience homophobia if I barked up that tree, sure. But in like the independent scene here, like completely the opposite. And there is a great queer music writing scene around here. There's a little collective called Rainbow that does a queer writers round at this really great lesbian bar, the Lipstick Lounge, one of the last real lesbian bars in the country, actually. It's amazing that it still exists, but at this really cool, this writers round that they do every week, all queer artists, like, there's definitely more to Nashville than like Nashville is the country place, Nashville is the South.
So my last question for you, the title, Boys Who Made Me Cry, is there a story behind this specific title and why you chose this? title?
Yeah, really, all of the songs, I mean, it's not necessarily, like, the EP is not, like, about one person specifically. It's just sort of a set of songs that I had and that I wrote that are about just different times in my life that I, like, really loved some boy, and I was feeling stronger about it than he was, and I ended up on the sad end of the stick. And I don't know, I just, like, they're just sort of my queer little heartbreak ballads. And one of the songs is called Boys Who Made Me Cry. And that song seemed like all of the other songs are sort of about different aspects of that dynamic of being super into someone and, like, you're not getting either they're blowing you off or they're down to get down, but that's all you get. But sort of, like, all of the songs on the record kind of come down under the umbrella of Boys Who Made Me Cry.
Well said, well said. I have to say, Max, thank you so much for your time. Thank you for being on the show.
Yeah. Thank you so much for having me.
Not even dreams compare to you. It's true.
Made Me Cry, Sundaes EP, is available now. And for more information, check out the website, sundaes.band. Up next, a queer rap set.
I am not heroic. I'm older than your father. I used to beat up little kids and I liked the power. I will not be fronting. I will not be smiling. Though you'll hopefully be laughing, you also will be crying. I am not essential. I am not courageous. I'm walking the streets praying that these mask holes aren't contagious. If you need me to tell you the Republicans are fascist thugs, there's something wrong with you. If you don't understand they want us dead, I don't belong with you. If you want preaching to the converted, then go to church. If you want wisdom of the elders, then I'm the worst. But if you want raw, unvarnished truth, I'll try to bring it. And if my rapping sucks, I guess I'll have to sing it.
I knew a man who joined the police. All he wanted was to do was keep the peace. He was downtown when those towers got hit. God knows he must have seen some awful shit. When they picked him up that night, he smelled like death. He was muttering underneath his breath. He said, "There's pieces of people on my shoe. There's pieces of people on my shoe. I don't know what I'm gonna do. There are pieces of people on my shoe." I had a boss who killed to get ahead. She stepped on other people until they bled. She had some friends, but that was just a sham. When she got cancer, no one gave a damn. Now she sits in a hospital room, talking to herself all afternoon. She says, "There's pieces of people on my shoe. There's pieces of people on my shoe. I don't know what I'm gonna do. There are pieces of people on my shoe." Last night I found my husband in bed with a man. I beat him up, threw him in the can. Do I tell him I'm sorry and forget the past? This isn't the first time and it won't be the last. He cleaned up the mess and said he paid his dues. Now my heart is splattered all over my shoes. There are pieces of people on my shoe. There are pieces of people on my shoe. I don't know what I'm gonna do. There are pieces of people on my shoe. There are pieces of people on my shoe. There are pieces of people on my shoe. I don't know what I'm gonna do.
You just heard in that queer rap set, mission statement. And there are pieces of people on my shoe. Those tracks from musician, rapper, and spoken word artist, the Mangfather Bob Katz, whose current album is 6 Cans of Olives. For more on this artist, themangfather.com. Up next, a spotlight on Canadian performer, producer, and DJ, Feura. Fair warning, strong language lies ahead. Fiora, hi, how are you?
Good, having a good day.
I have to say, thank you for being here to have your voice, your story be heard by the LGBT community and beyond. Thank you for that. You are a musical artist. You are a producer. Your current single is Zuck Me Off. Let's start here. Your music. How would you describe the sound, the sonic landscape of your music?
I consider my music currently to be very within the hyperpop space, which has been very queer dominated, I find, anyways, for the past 3 or 4 or 5 years. But yeah, hyperpop, Zuck Me Off is definitely a little bit different for me. It's a little bit more of an indie pop sort of track. But I'm very much, as a producer, into creating my own synths and things like that, but I also play guitar, bass, so you get to hear a little bit of all of that on Zuck Me Off.
So hyperpop, is this something new? Because I've never heard of this.
Yeah, hyperpop is, it's sort of pushing pop music to its logical extreme, so crazy auto-tunes, a lot of synthesizers, very metallic sound, and it's very much been taken on by a lot of queer communities for its ability to change your voice and be able to embody different sort of gender roles and things like that.
So you are a producer. Do you produce yourself, or do you have other producers produce you?
Yeah, so for everything that I've made, I completely produced myself. I started picking up music at the start of COVID-19, and I just absolutely fell in love with it and took as many music production courses as I possibly could, and have been working since then to just improve my craft.
Do you produce other artists?
Not yet. I think for myself, I'm more focused on my own art currently, but I'm starting to branch out and work on songwriting and top lining for other queer musicians within the area.
So you are part of the Factors Artist Development Program. What is this program?
Yeah, so Factor, you can apply and they give you a $2,000 grant for you to work towards whatever creative endeavors. So, whatever music you're working towards. It's a great opportunity for artists who are just starting out to start finding some money, to make things possible. So for me, that money was used towards the creation of the Zuck Me Off music video on a $2,000 budget. Of course, you're not going to get crazy amounts of camera crew and things like that. So the music video is self-directed, co-directed by myself and my filmmaker, Sean Kent. And storyline, all that written by me as well. And it's honestly great that Canada has so many different avenues for artists to find funding. I think it's something unique to our government, and it's phenomenal.
So Factor, was this your first grant that you applied for and you were successful with?
Yes.
Wow.
I'm super lucky. Yeah. I'm working right now towards my Ontario Arts Council grant for working towards my EP, which will be releasing later this year. But first try, I guess. I was lucky in that regard.
And you were saying the creation of the music video for Zuck Me Off, this was done by yourself?
Yeah, so the storyline and everything. Yeah, it was basically just me, a Ryerson filmmaker who's in first year that I happened to have through mutual connections. And I already had the vision for a long time that I knew I wanted to be on a leash. I knew I wanted to be walked downtown by Mark Zuckerberg, or Zaddy, as I call him. But everything was self-directed, and then my friends are featured as the different characters in it.
Let's talk about the music video aspect first before we talk about the song, because you're on a leash. It's very S&M, BDSM. Why did you choose this particular theme?
Yeah, one critique I've always had, as I actually went to the University of Toronto for political science, and one issue I've always had in academia is like a lack of accessibility based off of like aesthetics and things like that. So like, you have to look a certain way, or like critique has to be like done in a very like academic-y language way. So for myself, I was thinking, what are ways that I can make, politics fun, sexy, hot for young people? What do young people want to see? And I'm like, young people are horny. So how can I turn this into a satire? So the entire thought in my head was like, it's critiquing, of course, the exploitation of working class, the line being treat me like I'm your wage slave. So tying in BDSM imagery to that idea of like being a slave in this like hot sexual context, I think brings that like fun to politics that I think is missing and there's a high demand for right now.
And you shot this obviously in Toronto.
Yes, downtown and in the financial district.
You're a Toronto-based artist. Did you get reaction when you were filming this on the street?
Oh my goodness, yes. Actually, my dad
was
our security guard. Yeah, the reaction was a lot of people just looking, not really saying anything, but very clearly staring. And that was actually something I think was really important, because I wanted to explore the idea of exploitation is very much in the open. People are aware of what's happening. Like, we know how capitalism works. But it's sort of this situation where like something crazy is happening in the open, everyone's seeing it, everyone's staring, but nobody, like hardly anybody actually came up to me and was like, what is going on? What is this? Why are you doing this? Because I think with things like that, it's so shocking that it's just, easier to just kind of go, that was weird, and keep walking. And I think that is also just like,
but
if you look in the background, yeah.
Would you expect people to come up to you to ask what's going on, but maybe they didn't because you guys were filming and they didn't want to interrupt the filming aspect?
Yeah, I mean, there were a few people that did come ask, but most of them did end up being like journalists or things like that. I think we weren't filming for like that long. It always seems like when you're on a shoot, but like, because it was so like sort of homemade, the shoot, It wasn't like we had like a big film crew out there or anything. And we did a lot of moments of like me changing over to different locations, and we stayed in character the whole time because I wanted to, keep that going. And even then, like, it was just a matter of kind of staring.
How long did it take to shoot?
It was about 5 hours altogether. So, and it was
this
freezing
during COVID?
cold. Yes, it was. It was 2 days before Halloween that we did the shooting. So it was freezing cold. I was like in between shots having to put a coat on and things like that. But yeah.
And how do you feel about the final video project? The final video?
Yeah. I mean, I am so grateful to have such an amazing filmmaker working with me. I am more than happy with the final product. I think it looks great. I think that the editing throughout it is great. I think I look hot, which is what Matt, I look great, but yeah. I'm more than happy. I think for a first project, for my first time ever working with the medium of film, because I primarily worked in theater, I think it was a great first step into even bigger, greater things that I will be working on towards the future.
So you mentioned earlier you're working on an EP that's going to come out later on in 2022. Yes. Are you hoping to do more videos for other singles potentially for this EP?
Yes. For this EP, actually, I'm currently working on the project vision right now, but I'm really hoping to reach out to other drag artists in the community to shoot a music video. I'm kind of keeping up with, sort of sexual imagery, those sorts of things, but I always use sexual imagery as a form of critique because I think it's a great way to like show different sorts of like lusts and things like that within our society. But yeah, so for my next EP, it's going to be a huge music video shoot, hopefully, if I get the grant money. And yeah, it's tease a little bit, but it'll be for my song Super Hellraiser, which is pretty well known at my live shows.
So Zuck Me Off, is this your first single?
Yes, this is actually the third song I ever wrote in my life.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
I'm pretty new to writing music even. I mean, it very much started COVID.
Have you heard your single yet on broadcast radio?
Absolutely not. And I don't think it will, just because of the content. I've reached out to a lot of people, but you know, it's a matter of...
Well, you will now on Rainbow Country.
Yes, that's right. This is going to be the first
on 12
play
stations across Canada.
Yes, and I would rather not have it played anywhere else. This is the perfect place because, like, I want to reach my community, and this is the place. But yeah, no, a lot of people are, of course, very hesitant because of it's political, and secondly, I am moaning. So,
so you just mentioned political. You're a political individual, I gather. You have some political views.
I absolutely do. I mean, I think my existence, first of all, on a stage is just political in itself.
Why? How so?
I mean, for a queer body to exist on stage already is a statement. To be on a large public stage, it's getting better, but there's still always going to be resistance or like questionable, like, you know. But on top of that as well, being an artist who is visibly a minority in the fact that I'm also Chinese, I have that aspect. I consider myself non-binary, which is, you know, of course people are like, is that even real? And then on top of that as well, I consider myself a drag artist, and I'm doing a lot of sexual content on stage. So anytime I enter a stage, I realize that my presence is a statement in itself. And then any of my music on top of that, I want my music to also be an entity that exists outside of myself that is still political in itself. Because for me, like, my existence and my platform, I've always wanted to advocate for, of course, like LGBTQ people, queer people, people from different minoritarian groups. That's what I'm all about. And making it fun.
So you consider yourself queer. I'm interested to know for yourself, what does queer represent for you? Does it represent your political views, your gender identity, your sexuality? How does queer represent you?
For me, I consider myself like as an identity queer, and also what I do as queer in nature. In that, for me, I have that attitude, and I hope to spread that attitude of just like, screw what other people say, screw labels, things like that. Be whoever you are and be 100% authentically that. And that comes through in that, like, you know, I don't like to label my sexuality, things like that, with like hard terms like lesbian, gay, bi, just because like I'm attracted to all different kinds of people. I don't care what your gender is. It's more of a connection and things like that. And then when it comes to my music, how it is queer in nature is it's an accumulation of what I like to think of as all my experiences, and that comes through in a very queer sound. And having just like a combination of just, you know, be who you are, be what you want to be, and let that be known.
And when it comes to your single Zuck Me Off, what is the song about? What are you getting at in this single?
Yeah, Zuck Me Off, I consider it a conversation starter. So it's not trying to tell you like, hey, these are the problems with, you know, capitalism and exploitation of workers and how like inflation is going up and like minimum wage isn't. It's more of a matter of starting that conversation through a fun context and then working from there. So, you know, it pokes fun at Mark Zuckerberg, Elon Musk, Bezos, these giant corporate billionaires, to say, you know, what they're doing is kind of messed up. We should be starting to talk about this. And, you know, for example, I reference, treat me like you treat the poor kids in Africa, you know, exploit me, treat me like, you know, slave labor, use me. And that again is like a conversation starter for actually talking about, okay, let's sit down and think about how does our system work? Our system requires like actual child labor in order for us to get the goods that we have in our luckily very privileged world here in North America. So that's my goal with Suck Me Off.
So how can people find out all about Fiora, what you do, who you are, your music, all that sort of stuff?
Yeah, so you can find me on my website, feuramusic.com. Keep updated with latest shows, all of that, all my music. Check me out on Instagram at feura.mp3. That's feura.mp3. Check me out on Spotify, Apple Music, wherever you stream from. Just look up Feura, Feura, and I'll be there. And then, yeah, Twitter, Instagram, all of that. Same thing, Feura, MP3. And yeah, check out my stuff. Give it a stream. I got more coming in the future, and I think you're going to like what you're going to hear.
Well said, well done, well recorded. Thanks for your time, Fiora.
Thank you so much for having me.
Pull my hair, I'll be your bitch. Do you feel like big man? Push me harder like the numbers do for paper, yeah. I'll suck you off, it's my job. Does it come with benefits? Promise I won't join the union if you give me a raise. Yeah, 1% a year turns me the fuck on. Treat me like I'm your wage slave. Fuck me over, then take all of my things away. Baby, I know you gotta compensate. Not everyone's blessed with a big amount of generational wealth. And beat me blue, exploit me how you want. Treat me like you treat the poor kids in South Africa. You're so strong, big and tall, oh baby, I'll obey. Not because you have connections to the state or anything. Baby, let me go down on you like the establishment does for your money. I promise I'll go easy or rough. Keep me like I'm your wage slave. Fuck me over, then take all of my things away. Baby, I know you gotta compensate. Not everyone's blessed with a big Elon, this one goes out to you, you sick fuck. Zuckerberg, call me, I'll suck you the fuck off. Bezos, I know you like it from the back, so I brought my 9-inch strap. And to all the white moderates who want a female billionaire, don't worry, she's fucking coming, honey. Treat me like I'm your wage slave. Fuck me over, then take all of my things away. Baby, I know you gotta compensate. Not everyone's blessed with a big. Treat me like I'm your wage slave. Fuck me over, then take all of my things away.
Zuck Me Off is out now, and for more on this artist, FeuraMusic.com. Up next, a producer remixer set.
It's not your situation, I just did contemplation over you. I'm not so systematic, it's just that I'm an addict for your love. Not the only one that holds you, I never ever should have told you you're my only one. I'm not the only one that holds you, I never ever should have told you you're my only love. Just think how long I've known you. It's wrong for me to own you. Lock and key. It's really not confusing. I'm just the young illusion. Can't you see? I'm not the only one that holds so systematic. It's just that I'm an addict for your love. Not the only one who holds you. I think I've known it for some time. Never tried to own you. I never should have told you. Never should have told you. The only one who holds you. I never should have said a single word. Not a single word. I'm not the only one that holds you. I never ever should have told you you're my only one. I'm not the only one that holds you. I never ever should have told you you're my only love. Not the only one that holds you. I never ever should have told you you're my only one. Not the only one that holds you. I never ever should have told you you're my only love. Georgie, Georgie, put it back. Kiss the boys and make them cry. Georgie, Georgie, put it back. Kiss the boys and make them cry. Georgie, Georgie, put it back. Kiss the boys and make them cry. Kiss the boys and make them cry. Kiss the boys and make them cry. Georgie, Georgie, put it back. Kiss the boys and make them cry. Georgie, Georgie, put it back. Kiss the boys and make them cry. Georgie, Georgie, put it back. Kiss the boys and make them cry. Kiss the boys and make them cry. Kiss the boys and make them cry. Kiss the boy 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 and make them cry. And make them cry. Kiss the boy and make them high. And make them cry. Kiss the boys. Georgie. Kiss the boy and make them cry. Kiss the boy and make them cry. Kiss the boy and make them cry. Kiss the boy and make them high. And make them cry. Kiss the boy and make them cry. Kiss the boy and make them cry. Kiss the boys. Georgie. The calm before the raging storm. The breath before the words were spoken. The black before a plate of sun. This only boundless moment. Cope with the changing tide. Balance between the fast and slow. Absolute till you decide. Tempo adagio. A voice within prosaic crowds. A step outside their rhythm. You have it all, but careful of the doubt. Regret by one decision. Suffering. What might have been. Drowning along the current trains. Hesitating your path again. The meaning of it all. The meaning of it all. Oh.
We just heard in that producer remixer set, Georgie Porgy and Adagio. Those tracks from artist, producer, remixer Paul Andrews, whose current album is From the Distance. For all things Andrews, paulandrews.org. And just like that, this little gay journey through Rainbow Country has come to an end. To keep up to date with the show, make sure you follow me on socials at Mark Tara. The podcast is available on all major platforms, including audible.com and iHeartRadio. And finally, I want to take this time to thank you for taking your time to be with me. Remember, we are living in days of making dreams come true. So believe in yourself, and the world will believe in you. Now, taking us out, one of my original tracks, Different Love.
can depend and never worry. 'Cause what we're